Streaming live from the National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education, this is day 2 of the second joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference with the theme Limitless World of Filipino CPAs, Rising in Solidarity Amidst Challenging Times through Accounting Research. We are seen live not only via Zoom but also via NACPAE Facebook Live. This event is made possible through the partnership and generosity of the Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the PICPA Foundation Incorporated, and the National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education. Before we begin, here are some friendly reminders to ensure a smooth flow of the proceedings. Mute your microphone and turn off your camera throughout the webinar. Avoid using the chat box for non-essential comments and pleasantries, including chatting with other persons while the webinar is ongoing. Raise your questions about the webinar topic through the Q&A button. You may also like the questions of fellow attendees which you would like to be answered. Be prepared. Participants may not be able to re-enter the webinar once disconnected. Thus, ensure that your device has a sufficiently charged battery, a charger is readily available, and your internet connection is stable. Moreover, we encourage you to close any running notifications or applications to avoid experiencing internet disruptions or video lagging. Be aware that attendees' time in session or the amount of time spent in this webinar is monitored. Furthermore, attendees' active participation in the poll questions to be given during the webinar and submission of the duly accomplished evaluation form at the end of the webinar are conditions or requirements for earning a certificate of attendance. Poll questions may be launched at any point during our webinar, so we encourage attendees' undivided attention. Evaluation link will be provided through the chat box at the end of the session. Alternatively, upon leaving Leave webinar, you will be directed to the evaluation link. Certificate of attendance, together with the available materials from resource speakers, shall be sent to your email after the event. All right, so at this point, let us all welcome our host and master of ceremonies for today, the Assistant Secretary of PICPA and PICPA Foundation Research and Development Committee, and the NACPAE Vice President for Professional Development, Professor Mark Vincent B. Bendo. Let us give him a virtual round of applause. All right. Sir Mark, take it away.
Thank you very much, Professor Alan Frank D. Silva. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference with the theme Limitless World of Filipino CPAs, Rising in Solidarity Amidst Challenging Times through Accounting Research. Let us now start by offering this event to God through a prayer. May we now call on Professor Jackie R. Moreno, DBA, to lead us in our opening prayer.
Thank you, Lord, for this day, that you wanted us to see everything you have created. We seek forgiveness for things we have purposely done wrong and for those that we should have taken action on to correct. We praise you for allowing us to use our talents as teachers, mentors, and students to surface new truths in professional lives through the labor of study and research. Make us your instruments of peace to sow in each other's hearts the seeds of courage, to change ignorance into awareness. For being awakened will mean a call for action to do your will. Remind us to take part in the plans you worked out for us and to step aside when we know it will already be only you who can work miracles. Draw from our hearts the kindness to do good to people we do not know today, Lord. These people we will be meeting today may have their own crosses carried with them. Make us blessings to them as you have always blessed us and our loved ones. By the power of the Holy Spirit and the intercession of our Mother, the Blessed Virgin Mama Mary, we pray. Let us pause to pray for our own personal intentions. And if the desires of our heart coincide with your plan of love for us, Lord, thy will be done. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Do not bring us to the test, but deliver us from evil. Amen. That in all things God may be glorified.
Ladies and gentlemen, our Philippine national anthem. Good morning once again, and thank you for joining us in this webinar. This is our second day, or this is the second day of our summit. Let me now formally introduce to you our resource speakers for this morning. Our first resource speaker is a certified public accountant and a licensed professional teacher. She specializes in research, management consultancy, financial accounting, and auditing problems, with subspecialization in cost and management accounting. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Commerce, major in accounting degree, and Doctor in Business Administration degree from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. She earned her Master in Business Administration degree from the Colegio de San Juan de Letran and completed her teacher certificate program in Arellano University. She has been consistently recognized as an outstanding faculty and has conducted several seminars and trainings related to both accounting and research. She is the former program head, Internal Auditing Department, and the former assistant program head, Accountancy Department of the Far Eastern University, Manila. At present, she is serving as the research coordinator of the Far Eastern University, Manila, the treasurer and a board of trustee of the National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education, and an active member of the Teachers Organization of the Philippines, the ASEAN Accounting Education Work Group AAEW Research Committee, the PICPA Research and Development Committee, and the PICPA Faculty Development Committee. To share her expertise with us this morning, let us all welcome Professor Fe R. Ochotorena, DBA. Let us give her a round of applause.
A pleasant morning to everyone. Am I clear? Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, Doc Fe, we can hear you and we can also
Hello?
see you. Yes, Doc Fe.
Okay na. Good morning.
Good morning po.
Okay. Nako, unstable. Again, a pleasant morning to everyone. Yesterday, we already started talking about research, but it is substantially in the context of the school management, professional organization, and a research faculty. Now I will be talking about research in the context of a research teacher. By the way, my talk is actually a rerun of my previous lecture in PICPA last September 25. So hopefully I could cover everything now. And for those who are repeat attendees, I hope you will not get bored hearing the same discussion all over again. Moving on, I would like to thank PICPA Foundation, and NACPAET for this very rare opportunity. Thank you also to all the attendees in FB Live and in Zoom. I want to believe that you are all here because you love to do research, and you still believe that we should continue to conduct research amidst the pandemic because learning must go on towards a better normal. At this point, allow me to share my screen. Okay. I would like to begin my discussion. Ayaw mag-move. Using the basic principles of learning. These are the classic 3 R's of learning: reading, writing, arithmetic. This is the very foundation of all, or what rather, these skills are the basic tools that will help learners gain more knowledge in any course or any subject, be it in language, Filipino, mathematics, social studies, or science. In other words, we cannot move away from these classic 3 R's because they are the foundation of success of every individual in everyday life and in the workplace. Okay? However, these 3 R's are, although they are important, these are not going to be enough because our world is increasingly changing. In the same manner that education is evolving, and it has gone beyond these 3 tenets of learning. What was considered good education 50 years ago is no longer enough to succeed in their career. Therefore, if we want our learners to become more competitive globally and locally and globally, if we want to cope with the rapid changes of the modern world, especially the challenges of the present and even the future, there is a need to add another R. R that will help inspire these first 3 R's. And that fourth R is research. And that's what I call contemporary 4 R's of learning. Even if research is not part of the CPA licensure exam, this is very valuable in developing the competencies needed by our learners in the workplace, whether they become CPA or not. Especially now that we are adopting the online learning, some of the competencies are being neglected, and this can be addressed by research. Actually, research is a response to the forces of the 21st century skills declared by UNESCO. They believe that students need specific skills to fully participate in today's global community. These four skills are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Communication is being addressed by research, especially the written communication skills. Collaboration is working with others. This is also being addressed by research because usually in an undergraduate, it is in the context of a group. So they share their ideas, their talents, and they assume shared responsibility. Research also addressed critical thinking, which refers to the different kinds of thinking skills. It is the ability to find effective solution to problems and issues, and that is one of the core issues or aspect of research. And also, research also addressed creativity, which is the ultimate output or outcome of research, which is producing high quality work. Please take note that these skills were supposed to be developed in the basic education, but it is the responsibility of the teachers in the higher education to enhance these skills. Research cannot be learned overnight. So the most effective option is what we call scaffolding method. Research skills, as I have said, cannot be learned in a week, in a semester, or in a year by students. They must be taught year-round throughout primary school years because this can only be mastered as they mature and gain experience. Using the Bloom's taxonomy, this is actually applying the scaffolding method. We all begin from the personal narrative, which is simply a recall of an event. Remember, during our primary school years, we are asked to prepare a short narrative like my memorable Christmas vacation. And then we move forward to expository writing, where we ask to explain a particular concept, like a concept of evaporation and condensation. And then it is followed by persuasive writing, wherein we are required to take position, like who is the better president, Marcos or Duterte. And then the undercreate, which is the highest level of critical thinking. It is where the learners produce or generate an output through creative writing. In fact, this is part of the higher order thinking skills. And probably this is the reason why basic education includes in their curriculum the research so that it can address the forces of 21st century skills, as well as in order to apply this what we call scaffolding method. Teaching and research must go hand in hand. This was mentioned by our keynote speaker yesterday, that teaching and research result to an effective learning. True, because teaching and research improve one another. You can be an effective teaching faculty if you are also a research faculty. Probably you can do a research about this so that you can prove that in order to become an effective teaching faculty, you should be a research faculty. Why? Because in accounting, for example, if you're going to teach, let's say a topic about financial instruments, you have to do a sort of research about the different interrelated accounting standards. You start with PAS 39, which is the old accounting standards, PAS 32, and then what are the developments under IFRS 9, IFRS 7. So actually, we are already conducting research without knowing it. So we are all researchers. How to teach research is not evident. Compared to other subjects like history, English, Filipino, math, teaching, these subjects are usually taught in college, especially if you are an education major. But how to teach research is not evident. In fact, there is no single course or subject on how to teach thesis. Thesis is not written in the same order as it is presented. Usually, we are given a fixed syllabus by our department heads. We are required to follow that. But in teaching research, a thesis teacher should exercise flexibility. You do not need to follow strictly the sequence indicated in the syllabus. It is not similar to other subjects, yung sinasabi nilang dekahon, because there is no unique or specific way to teach research. You have, as a thesis teacher, you have to provide feedback constantly, especially now that we are adapting the online learning, because it is an opportunity to make our students feel that we are always there for them. Wag ho yung puro pag nagpadala ng message or question, sin-zone lang tayo. We have to provide feedback. We have to build opportunities for revision and refinement. The teacher should not only focus on the product, meaning on the output, but the teacher must also focus more on the process of writing. Let your students experience the thorough revision process. Do not immediately give them poor grades on their first drafts, since this will result to lack of confidence in their ability to produce good writing. Similar to non-output-based courses, this is actually part of what you call formative assessment. These are some of the functions of a thesis teacher. She is a mentor, because a teacher will serve as an intellectual teacher, because she has to teach the students the what, the why, the when, the where, and the hows of research. You see, a thesis teacher should be well-rounded in that aspect. A thesis teacher is also a facilitator or an advisor, because she has to provide guidance and directions to the students' research and help them to come up with an output. She is also an evaluator, because she has to keep an eye on the movement or progress of the paper. She needs to evaluate students' progress and gives feedback and judgment for improvement. And lastly, a thesis teacher is also an editor, because you have to proofread your students' work or output. You have to fix the grammatical and spelling errors, language, and some of the plagiarism. At the outset of the process, after the forming of research group, that is the first step that you have to do as a thesis teacher. You have to form a research group. But you must be prepared to provide your students the different assessment tools. This is for transparency, because this is not, no objective examination will be given in this particular subject, because this is an output base. So they should be aware on how they will be evaluated, especially now that we are adapting the online learning. So even if you are not around, they know how they are being evaluated based on their output. These are some of the assessment tools. You should not only focus on the written output. Even during synchronous meeting, you can have your output, their output presentation, and then their classmates may give some critiquing. Then the submission of the output, which is your responsibility, that is where you're going to assess the final product of that particular output. There is also what you call peer evaluation. You have this mock defense, not necessarily the teacher herself. Probably you can invite another teacher for the mock defense in preparation for the proposal defense. And then final oral defense, and probably poster presentation, and the final paper. All of these things must be assessed using rubrics. This is just a simple rubrics. The rubrics should be simple so that even if you are not around, the students could determine or identify their weaknesses and their strengths in terms of the rubrics. There is also this is also an example of the peer evaluation sheet. This is intended for the leader, because you are not around when they do their brainstorming, when they do their collaboration work. So you have to assign the reader to evaluate her members. And at the same time, the members will also evaluate the leader. So there are different criteria for each evaluation sheet. Probably you can prepare another evaluation sheet which is without reference to their position, whether they are the members or the leader. Also, there is an evaluation for the oral defense, for the individual examiner, and also for the chairperson, for the overall rating. And also, problema yata sa internet. Ayan. There must be a research revision sheet, accounting research revision sheet or comment sheet, so that every comment or suggestion that will be given by the panelists shall be written here. But usually, they do not write in here. They usually use the manuscript and write their comments there directly. You are also required during this pandemic, during this current situation, to provide for a timeline. This is for, what do you call this? Consistency. Consistency, because in here you're going to provide an arrangement. For example, if your class is Monday to Thursday, your students must be aware that every Thursday there will be a submission. Hindi na kailangan magtanong kasi that is already expected because you have provided them the timeline. So this will be, we're going to provide consistent expectation from both ends. On the point of view of the faculty, she is expecting that she is going to receive and check every Thursday. And on the point of view of the students, they are expected to submit an output. Also, at the beginning of classes or opening, first day of classes, you have to inform your students regarding the distinction between the conventional thesis and a publishable research paper, or which is a journal format. Because even if we're going to provide them the syllabus, during the review of related literature, most of the journals or the research outputs are in publishable format. So you have to give them the distinction that research thesis is usually longer, it takes more time, there is an assigned teacher, and it is subject to final oral defense. While the publishable format, usually it is subject to peer review, and there is no assigned teacher. This is the most common format for publishable or for journal format, the what you call IMRAD. Introduction, methods, results, and discussion. There are different variations that apparently are derived from the IMRAD. So, if you're going to give them the syllabus in here, this will be the coverage of the introduction, including the RRL. The methods basically are the same. Chapter 4, which is the presentation, analysis, and interpretation of the data, will fall under results. Chapter 5 will be under discussion. So using this, if you're going to distinguish using this matrix, this will assist them if they want to convert their 5-chapter format thesis into a publishable research format. Alam na nila kung anong ilalagay sa I, alin sa M, alin sa R, alin sa D. Okay? Under the new curriculum, which is the 2018 curriculum, which is applicable for the first batch of the senior high school or K-12 graduates, the first batch, we are given the CHED memorandum requires a 6-unit subject divided into 2 subjects: methods of research and accountancy research, or internal auditing research, or management accounting research, and accounting information system research. So for the first part, we have chapter 1 to 3, including the proposal defense. And then for accountancy research, they will start with actual data gathering, and then chapter 4, 5, together with the abstract and final oral defense, of course. So, this is how I approach. These are some of the ways on how I approach the teaching of thesis. I do not claim that they are unique, but it works for me. Always remember that there is no single way to teach thesis. Probably some of you are teaching it in a different way. Sometimes RRL will be the first step. But for me, we have to identify the problem before we do the RRL. So this is not the sequence of your syllabus. As I have said, thesis is not prepared in the same order that it is presented. The first step, specific to my approach, I hope this will also work for you. You have to classify the topics, whether it is considered as a blind spot or blank spot. When you say blind spot, these are actually the weaknesses of the approach. These are supposed to be seen by the researcher. However, due to some circumstances, he failed or she failed to see. In other words, it is inadequate. For example, the researcher used quantitative. Quantitative has weaknesses, which can be addressed by qualitative. So, in that sense, there is a weakness. Misapplication or inappropriate use of methods, misapplication of statistics. That is what you call blind spot. But for blank spot, these are actually those areas that are not yet covered. All studies have particular scope, particular location, particular time, particular context, and then particular participants. Therefore, there are plenty of other circumstances which the research does not cover. These things not covered constitute blank spots. In reality, all studies have this. All research is partial. It is not inadequate, but it cannot cover all the possibilities because there is no research that can do all of this. Otherwise, magiging fruit salad po ang research natin. Okay? One at a time lang. In identifying the topic, we have to allow them to choose their own topic of interest that is specific to their own classroom context, based on their own practices, based on their own experiences and issues. Because when our students are passionate about their research topic, they are more likely to put energy. They are proud of their work. They are more curious and optimistic to finish their topic, which is difficult to achieve when we are assigning them a specific prompt. So, one thing that you have to emphasize is that the topic that they have to choose must provide solution to the problem. You do not do a research without any problem, but there must be a solution. Also inform them to avoid topics with limited literature. Give your students the time to brainstorm the ideas and organize the topic. You can do it during face-to-face, you can do it inside the classroom, but under the online learning, you can do it under this discussion group, under Canvas or other platform. Okay? Now, there are other considerations in selecting a research topic. The data availability, rather. You have to ensure that the chosen topic of your students is manageable. Who are the participants or the sources of the data? Determine if it is feasible to collect the data. Do they have the access to the participants? Maganda nga ang topic, wala namang makukuhang data. Ayan. So they have to revise the research topic. Time frame. How much time do they have to collect the data? How to collect that? What is the method of collection, data collection? How do they collect the data? Through survey, through interview, through FGD or observation? Where is the location? Will they be able to gain access to the data they need? For example, if they need to travel to a specific location, parang hindi po appropriate para sa isang undergraduate student. What type of data is needed? primary, secondary, qualitative, or quantitative. And what method should be used? Either it is descriptive or inferential statistics. So what I'm trying to say is, when your students choose a topic, you have to guide them in terms of the research design. This is just an anticipation so that they can, beforehand, they can already decide whether to continue or not, whether to revise their topic or not. In identifying the topic, you can use concept mapping so that your students will not get bored. Under concept mapping, you prepare a concept map related to the central theme. For example, this is their favorite topic, the students, which is usually, this is their topic of interest. And then from this, you indicate other related topics that may stem from this central theme. These are some of the factors that may affect the CPA licensure exam. And you can also branch out other related topics or associated issues and questions. For example, for integrated review course, there are issues of clarity of discussion, teaching strategy of the reviewer. For qualifying examination, there are some of the issues: homogeneous sectioning, curriculum, what is this? Admission policy, curriculum, and then you have the retention policy. This concept mapping will facilitate the formulation of the research problem, specific research questions, and even some survey questions. This will help them. So the next step after identifying your topic is the literature review. Literature review requires basically 4 steps. You have to locate from the internet, from the library, then you obtain, you read, and then you evaluate. When they evaluate, of course, this may be coming from the current and retrospective information, coming from the books, coming from journals, etc., etc. But the books, dissertation, peer-reviewed journals, peer-reviewed conference proceedings are more credible than this, because these are all evaluated. They have to find more relevant sources to make sure that they read any landmark studies. Advise them to, because they cannot read everything, so they have to start reading the abstract and determine whether the article is useful in their study. And from there, they have to make a summary table and cite. I will discuss it later. Okay? Literature review is very important because it provides a background knowledge and information about the chosen topic. It familiarizes the researcher with the issues, because it helps the researcher to determine if the research is relevant or significant. It highlights the status and accomplishment, what has been done, what has already been done by the other authors. And then you can see the relationship of their results, of their findings, so that by familiarizing and tracing the progress of the existing literature, they will be able to identify the gaps. They will be able to evaluate the weaknesses of the previous research outputs, because that review will connect with what they want to do for the research. And that will ensure that there will be no duplication. And lastly, it will help the researchers or our students to understand better, or they will be more expert in their topic if they're going to do a comprehensive review of related literature. And therefore, they will be more confident during the proposal or final oral defense, because they're already expert after doing this review of related literature. These are some of the guides in conducting the review of related literature. First and foremost, you have to specify the general document guidelines. You have to specify the prescribed margin, the pagination, the prescribed font type, font size, the header, whether it is a double line spacing or what. You have to inform your student that one paragraph must not exceed 1/2 page of the paper. You have to determine the selection criteria. What do I mean by this? You have to indicate the specific number of each type. How many local literature, how many foreign literature, how many local and foreign studies. You have to specify if the related literature has to be least semi-current, indicate how old the sources be. Clearly, there is no hard and fast rule about how old. But most fields of the study use 10 years old and above. But the rule, of course, not too much or not too little for both old and new, meaning it should be balanced. You have to be precise on what you expect from your students' output. Specify if they have to provide background information, definition, or histories. Ayan. You also need that your citation protocols are clear. Whether they're going to use American Psychological Association or APA, which is you simply indicate for the citation the surname and the year, or the Modern Language Association, which in you have to indicate the first name. And then you have what you call Chicago and Turavian, that is the footnoting and endnotes. You should be clear with that. So, relative to this, you have to inform them that they have to use direct quotation sparingly. In other words, as much as possible, do not use direct quotation. Although, because quoting or direct quotation is identical to copying the text exactly, verbatim. But if it cannot be avoided, you enclose it with quotation marks and you indicate the page number. That is direct quotation. But the rule is no more than 10% of the entire paper is allowed for direct quotation. You should teach them how to paraphrase, how to summarize, and how to synthesize. When you say paraphrase, it means putting someone else's thought, meaning using their own thoughts, but you are using your own words and style. But the idea is still coming from the original author. When you say summarize, it means you're only including only important or salient points from the sources. So if it is a summary, usually it is shorter. And when you synthesize, it means combining several literature into one by comparing, contrasting, so that you can draw a conclusion. Now, regardless of whether you're going to use direct quotation, paraphrasing, summarizing, or synthesizing, you are required to acknowledge the sources. Kahit pa sinamarize mo yan, the idea is not yours. Kaya kailangan may citation pa rin. So you have to follow the golden rule of plagiarism, of anti-plagiarism rather. Give credit where credit is due. Keep their own voice, meaning they have to use their own words. They should start their paragraph with their own words and end with their own words also. Okay? Be selective, meaning they have to use or get from the sources that are credible. Refrain from getting from Wikipedia. Okay? And when they search, they have to use multiple relevant keywords. Ayan. Be selective. Probably you can use ISI, Scopus, but usually these are, there's a payment for this. But there are also reliable sources like Google Scholar, ResearchGate. They have to use transitional phrases and connectives to make it more, to spice this with variety. Instead of using, let's say, found out at every time the researcher A found out that, researcher B found out. You can use you can replace it with observed, supported. Use transitions to unify the ideas, like in addition to, likewise, furthermore. Ayan. Do not use emotional phrases in a literature review. And lastly, they have to organize the topics. Teach them how to organize. The most common is the thematic organization, wherein it is based on the topic. You organize. You combine similar topics in one paragraph. There's also what you call chronological organization, that is based on time, based on publication date. So it depends, because it is usually institutional requirement. It's the call of the institution rather. Okay? How many sources are needed? It is not a black and white rule, this one. This is just a suggestion. Because usually when we are asked by our students, our answer is very vague. It depends. Why don't we give them an exact answer, a precise answer? Let's say for undergrad, it's 20 plus, meaning the minimum. But they should not only meet the minimum standard, because that's why it's called 20 plus. So it depends on the teacher. But the rule is, you always aim for quality over quantity. However, to do quality literature review, you need to have a substantive quantity of resources. So in other words, it must be both quality and quantity. This is what I'm referring earlier, that you have to prepare a summary table sheet when you do your literature review, diba? At the same time, while reading, you already write. You already do your writings, so that you will not go back anymore. You have to write here the references, the variables, the methodology, the findings, and so that you can determine already the gap. You can do Excel so that you can widen the spaces, the, what you call these columns, and then the rows. Let's proceed now for the crafting of the research title. After your enriched review of related literature, you can now craft your title. These are the basic contents of your title: the problem, the solution, and the participants. The title is very important. It does matter a lot, because the title is the part of the paper that is read the most, and it is usually read first. So the title must capture the reader's attention. Diba? There's a saying, first impression matters. So yan po yun. So hindi, diba? There's a saying, do not judge a book by its cover. But sometimes the research is judged by the title, which is part of the cover. Okay. In crafting the thesis title, there is a problem, of course. And for every problem, there is a solution. But before you can come up with a solution, there are some strategies or treatment that must be done. Giving you an example, for example, this is the problem: the low passing rate in the CIPALE of XYZ University. What do you think could be the strategies to solve this problem? Probably is the strict implementation of the retention policy. So if you're going to come up with a title, strict implementation of retention policy towards an improved CPA licensure examination performance. So CPA licensure examination is the problem. Strict implementation of retention policy is the solution. And then you have your participants. You can also do an inverted pyramid. So from general to specific, this is the problem. These are the possible solutions. And then you want to make it more specific, you choose. If you want to use all of them as your variables, independent variables, you may do so. But if you want to use, let's say, retention policy, here, from general to specific. And then, these are some of the quick tips. Use words that would create a positive impression and stimulate readers' interest. Refrain from using unnecessary words. O hindi na daw po pwedeng gamitin to. A study of, analysis of, an assessment, an investigation, an evaluation of, etc., or other similar construction. Because it is already given. It is already implied that the research is a study. It is an analysis. It's an assessment. So bakit mo pa ilalagay? Parang ganun. Okay? Keep the title short, simple, and brief. Usually, you limit it to 5 to 15 words. You aim, if you cannot follow this, you aim for this. Number of letters, 50 to 100 characters. Ayan. You avoid jargon. non-standard abbreviation. That means if it is standardized, meaning it is a common abbreviation, you can use that. But for non-standard abbreviation, it is not. It is usually discouraged. Avoid using jargon. Jargon are specific terms or terms specific for a particular or terms only applicable to a specific profession. For example, in our case, diba, we have jargons like debit credit, arm's length transaction, something like that. Okay. You avoid Roman numerals, special symbols units, and use current language as much as possible. Instead of using CPA board exam, you can use CPA licensure exam. Kasi sa title pa lang malalaman kung luma o bago yung research. So usually you use the current term. This is the other parts of the introduction of chapter 1. So for the background, you write the current practices to address the issue. What is the research gap? It is very important that under the background of study, you have to identify the gap. What is the significance of addressing the gap? And you end up your paragraph with a thesis statement. Therefore, this study was conducted to, and the name thesis statement. Research question. This research question should be anchored to your main problem. In other words, these research questions must answer your main problem. When you are targeting for 4 research questions, try to ask from your students as many as you can, as many as they can. Because when they submit, they usually don't submit research questions. They submit survey questions. But if they're going to submit, let's say 20 or more, from there you can assist them to formulate an appropriate research questions. But the rest of the questions can be useful. They can still be useful. They have to keep it because probably some of those questions may be used in the preparation of the survey questionnaire. And of course, hypothesis is also part of your research questions. If there is an hypothesis, that must always be part of the research question. I will discuss this later. For the definition of terms, it should be contextual or operational, meaning how does it operate in your paper? When you define, let's say, your study about the students, you do not define it coming from the definition of Google or from Thesaurus or Webster. You define it on how you use it in your paper. Students are third-year students currently taking BSA Accountancy in the University of the Philippines. Ayan, parang ganyan yung mga operational. Now, there are times that your definition may be similar because you get an idea from the thesaurus. So, they are basically the same, but the idea, you get it from, there is a source. So, you have to cite the source. If it is not original, it is not your original definition. Okay? Now, talking about hypothesis, you have two, null and alternative. Remember this, hypothesis is not always necessary. It's not always necessary. It is only necessary for problem-oriented research, meaning for causal comparative, yung cause and effect, and then for correlational studies. But for descriptive and exploratory, these are a hypothesis is not needed. Remember that. Okay? Before, we have in the thesis, we have to identify both the alternative and the null. Now, what is it is already acceptable that you are only going to place the null because this is the hypothesis that you're going to prove. And it follows now. It follows na, na-prove mo na, nasagot mo na rin yung alternative. So, just place the null hypothesis would suffice. Okay? Another part of the introduction is the theoretical framework and the conceptual framework. In some schools, they consider this as the same. But in our case, specific to FEU, Far Eastern University, Manila, they are different. This must come first because this contains one or more tested theories. This will come after the theoretical framework. This one is broader. This is more focused. This depends on the RRL. This one depends on the researcher's work. That means this is the background. This is the present. Giving you an example, assuming that you're going to use the theory of conditioning of Thorndike's, which is the stimulus and response theory. If this is the framework that for every stimulus there is a corresponding response, this is the theoretical framework, you can come up with a conceptual framework because conceptual framework is the operationalization of the theory. The stimulus would be integrated review course. The response would be the performance in the CIPALE. So this is more broader, this is more specific. In here, there is what you call independent and dependent variable. Speaking of dependent and dependent variable, it is anything that has quantity and quality that varies. However, the independent variable is constant because it is a predictor for the cost. So ito constant lang po to. So in that case, it is the integrated review course, which is the independent. And then the performance in the board exam is the dependent variable because it changes. It refers to the outcome or effect. These are other examples of conceptual framework, which is correlational. There are 3 independent variables. Correlation, there is a two-way heads. Of the two-way heads yung arrow. Arrow 2. Now, if it is causal, syempre, one-way lang yung arrowheads. Age is has an effect to weight. Probably yes, probably not. Okay. Speaking of variables, there are other variables aside from the independent and the dependent. You have what you call mediating or intervening, which explains the relationship. Meaning, mediator is the middle variable between the independent and the dependent. In other words, the independent is not directly related to the dependent, but they are indirectly. Independent variable is indirectly influencing the dependent variable through mediating variable. In other words, without the intervening or mediating variable, there will be no relationship between the independent and the dependent. In other words, it answers the question how. Paano sila naging related? There is something in between. Ayan. Now, another one is the moderating or effect modifying variable. This time, it is called effect modifying because the moderating variable may either increase or decrease the effect of the independent to the dependent. So, for example, this one, it may increase or decrease depending on the motivation of the examinee. If the examinee is highly motivated, the performance will improve or increase. But if there's a lack of motivation, the dependent variable may decrease. So, yung moderating. Yung isa, this one answers the question, why?
So as I was saying, we are discouraged now to use the IPO process because it is actually outdated. Actually, input, process, output is the definition of a business, di ba? There must be an input, a process, and output. That would be probably the reason why it is no longer encouraged to use this as part of your conceptual framework. And then we have scope and limitations. So the scope are actually the boundaries. What are included? There are different limitations in here. Okay? These must be addressed in your recommendations. So the next would be your next chapter, which is still the coverage of methods of research. First, we start with the research methods, specifically the general research design. We have qualitative and quantitative. When you say quantitative, that is referring to numbers. And when you say qualitative, it is more on you make use of your senses. So usually the methods for qualitative are observations, interview, focus group discussion, case study. In here, the most common is your survey questionnaire. Okay? Oh, wait a minute. I will expound. Sorry. Ayan. So for, what do you call this? Longitudinal, meaning a long period, in a longer period of research, data gathering, you can use trend analysis, cohort, or panel study. So these are actually general research design. Now, there are specific research design under each general research design. Under quanti, you have action research, you have correlational, causal, comparative, explanatory, experimental, there are different types. For quasi-experimental, there are also different types. And then for quali, you have, Case study, historical, ethnography, when you study a certain social group, let's say you want to study the religious beliefs of the Ifugao, something like that. And then phenomenology, you study a certain phenomenon. For example, a lived experiences of a single woman. Okay. There are different types, two types of sampling method, which are supposed to be covered in your business statistics, in their business statistics. Probability sampling, which may be stratified or cluster, and cluster sampling, systematic. And then you have multi-stage, which is an advanced version of the stratified sampling. And then the most accurate, the simple random sampling. You see the difference between the stratified and the cluster. In here, every group is being represented. But in here, although they're already randomly grouped, only the samples will be taken from a particular cluster or particular group. And then you have non-probability sampling. You have only four. Purposive or judgment sampling. You have quota sampling, which is similar to cluster, but this is already predetermined. That's why it's called quota. And then you have what you call snowball sampling, meaning referral. Let's say you want to conduct a research about a gay politician. Siyempre, medyo ano yan, sikreto. So, from one respondent, he's going to refer another one, and then another referral. That's why you call that snowball sampling. Therefore, convenience sampling, you call that is sometimes called accidental sampling. Kung sinong nandun, aksidente, nandyan siya, o siya na lang. That's why it is also called grab or opportunity sampling. Yeah. With regard to a sample size, there are a number of approaches in determining the sample size. Either you use the census. If there's a smaller population, you conduct or you survey all of them 100%, and you call that census study. Sometimes the basis would be imitating the sample size of the similar study. Or sometimes you apply a statistical formula like Sloven's formula, Coran, or sometimes you use published tables like this one. It's taken from the research advisors. Now, here are the different. These are already tested by the statistician. That's why it was being published in the research advisors. Now, when you say data saturation for phenomenology, meaning, let's say you have already interviewed 5 respondents. Pagdating sa 6, the response of number 6 is similar to number 5. And then you go to 7, the response is also similar to 6 and 5. Meaning, wala nang bago sa sagot. It is already saturated. Something like that. Okay? These are also some of the proven or tested by a statistician that a minimum sample size of 100 is already sufficient. In fact, if you're going to use the Sloven's formula at 10% margin of error, the result would be 99 to 100. Now, there is another beliefs by many statisticians that 30 to 500 would suffice at 5% confidence level. If you're going to use Sloven's formula at 5%, usually it is between this value, 30 to 500. There is also another that a maximum sample size would be 10%. Maximum to, maximum 10% of the population as long as this does not exceed. But these are not, these are not what you call this hard and fast rules. General recommendation for in-depth interviews, sample size of 20 to 30. And if you're going to use linear regression, 10 samples per variable. So if you have 5 variables, you have to have 50. 5 variables, 5 times 10, yes. Okay. What is important is, in practice, most people normally want the results to be accurate, diba? The higher the sample size, the more it is accurate. But of course, you have to consider first, you have to consider also the time and the money involved. If you don't have any, you don't have enough time or money, then probably you can choose the largest number that you can manage. As long as it is 100 or more. These are the different quantitative data analysis. I'm not an statistician, but if you are a researcher, you are a research teacher, you should know the basic, when to use median, when to use mean, when to use weighted mean, etc., etc. Okay? And these are inferential. Now for qualitative, usually, if it is qualitative research, it is subject to bias and it is prone to, it is subjective kasi. It is subject, more prone to bias. So you have to hire an intercoder. Dapat may kasama ka so that you will not be alone in deciding the different categories when you group them to a particular team. Okay? The last part of the methods of research would be the stages or the preparation of the survey questionnaire. Of course, your survey questionnaire must be anchored to your research questions. Kailangan yung survey question, sasagutin niya yung research question. Kaya minsan namamali yung resulta because they failed to recognize or they failed to relate it to the research questions. The first is you state the question, then you find relevant data from the RRL. You have to validate. The first step is to validate by the experts. That is the very first thing that you have to validate. That is for content. For content, that would be for those who are knowledgeable about the topic. For the wordings, probably grammarian can do that, format, order, and then the length. Format in terms of face validity, and then the order of the questions. Then you have to revise based on the comments of your validators. And then you proceed with pre-testing. When you talk of pre-testing, that is actually testing similar, not your actual participants. In other words, if your actual participants are coming from FEU, probably you can do pre-testing in UST, yan, similar. And then based on the results of that pre-testing, you have to revise it again. After revising, you do the pilot testing. This time, it is your actual respondents, but it is a mini sample, let's say 30. Because this 30 would be the basis of your reliability testing. Validity is different from reliability. There are different tests of reliability, but the most common for research is the Cronbach alpha. In some authors say that 60 is already reliable. Some say it is 65, and some say it is 70. So in case you're going to use the 60, you have to cite the source so that you have your basis. Okay, and then finally you can have your final instrument. Again, do not administer your questionnaire unless it is pre-tested. Because in the interest of time, sometimes you do not do the pilot testing, you only do the pre-testing. Because this is the most important, the pre-testing. Yan. Okay? This is also very important because in terms of content, if your survey questionnaire was able to answer your research questions, the format, the grammar, okay? Now, if you do not want to use survey questionnaire, there are other instruments that you can use. Interview guide, if you're going to conduct an interview. Field notes, those are using observation. May mga ano yan, nagfi-field notes. Pagdating ng gabi, sa kanila ina-analyze. Ayan. And then you have test questions, of course. You can use that. In validating, this is an example of a validation sheet. You have your research questions here. You have to indicate the research question so that the validator would be able to know if your survey questions were able to answer your research questions. And then they can give their comments in terms of appearance, clarity of language, length of the survey. So in here, there's also comments and suggestions, whether it is acceptable or it has to be deleted or changed. Ayan. Okay. Now, it was also mentioned yesterday by our resource speaker, keynote speaker rather, that there are ethical issues. First, this is part of the research ethics or the ethics of academic writing. You should have a consent form, which is for voluntary participation. Importante yan, regardless of whether legal age or not legal age. Kailan po to? If the respondent is below legal age, then it is the parent who will sign for the voluntary participation. But nevertheless, even if the respondent is of legal age, you have to have him, the respondent, sign the consent form. You have to protect also the anonymity of the respondent. You have to protect the personal data that they provide. That is in compliance with the Data Privacy Act of 2012. And you have also to ensure confidentiality. Anonymity is different from confidentiality. Confidentiality is in terms of, what do you call this? Confidentiality in his or her responses. Sa response to, that his responses should be, must be confidential. Hindi siya, let's say, he's talking about his own company. Siyempre, the data that he provides must be confidential. Okay? Yan yung mga kailangan for questionnaire. So, after the questionnaire, the next would be your proposal defense. With the proposal defense, of course, once you have finished your methods of research, substantially it is almost 50% complete. Pwede na siya. So, the next step would be for the next term, which is accountancy research. Now, we are constrained. We have mobility and, what do you call this? Time and mobility constraints. The research process are the same. The research standards based on ethics, data integrity remain the same. But there are certain adjustments in terms of approach, particularly with respect to data gathering. Since you are now discouraged to do the face-to-face or the physical distribution of questionnaires, there are some data collection method that you can do in lieu of the face-to-face. First, the survey questionnaire can be converted into the Google Forms. So uploaded, convert it to Google Forms, and then you can upload the link to the messenger or to the email, or you can also upload it to Twitter, Instagram, and Viber. I'm saying that it should be the link. Although you can upload the files, but it is more convenient on the part of the researcher to upload the link because the result is already summarized if it is a link. Now, if you're going to use interview instead of survey questionnaire, you can do the following the data collection method, the following data collection methods. Online interview, cell phone interview, landline phone interview, or video call or online live chat. This is in lieu of the face-to-face. Of course, you have to set a schedule. Now, instead of doing focus group discussion, you can do video conferencing using the different platforms. The Zoom, MS Teams, Google Meet. Yan. Okay? Now, this is already chapter 4. Presentation, analysis, and interpretation of the results. So in here, so that it would be easy for the panelists to determine whether you have answered the research questions, you have to indicate here your first research question. And then use APA format. You provide for the table, maybe one table or two, that answered your first research question. When you explain this, when you tabulate or present this one, this is what you call presentation. When you do the computation, that is what you call analysis. But interpretation is not interpreting what does it mean, but it is actually interpreting the results. First, you highlight the most significant, and then you highlight the least significant, and then you interpret the overall. Let's say, first factor, agree. This one said disagree, but the overall is strongly agree. You have to interpret why is it strongly agree. What does it mean? This is where the section, this is the section where the students will incorporate their own creativity. Ayan. So hindi po yung i-interpret mong WM is strongly agree. No, you are interpreting the results. And you do the same for the rest of the research questions. Now for chapter 5, which is the summary of the findings, inclusion, and recommendations. Your findings should be anchored in your research questions. In other words, if you have 4 research questions, you must also have 4 findings and 4 conclusions. Tahi-tahi po yan, di ba? From the main problem which is manifested in your title, your research questions are anchored to your main problem, meaning it will answer your main problem. Their survey questions must be anchored to your research questions. And then your findings and conclusions must be anchored to your research questions. So, kung apat sila, apat lahat yan. Except for the recommendations, of course. Because the recommendation may be more or may be less. Because there may be one conclusion that may require 2 or more recommendations. Or sometimes one conclusion does not need any recommendation. Okay? For your findings, you have to, for the summary, chapter 5, you have to indicate the overall. So dito, wag na kayong magme-mention ng mga weighted mean. You just indicate the overall findings. And then you compare it. You compare the results. You link your findings to the existing literature. Kailangan, isa-cite mo dito yung literature and explain the interrelationship. If it confirms, let's say, the former, what do you call, the previous author used quantitative and then you use qualitative. You try to compare. Parehas ba kayo ng resulta? If it confirms the results. The problem is if your result is different or it negates the previous findings, then you have to discuss why. Okay? So it's very important. Do not forget to link your findings to the existing literature to support your findings. You do the same for your other research questions. For the conclusions, as I have said, this should be anchored on your findings. Your conclusions, sorry for this, is a broader meaning of the results. It is not simple interpretation because it also includes opinion of the researcher. So you have to tell your students that they have to include facts from the literature review. Because this is your opinion. Yes, you can support, you can give your own opinion, but it should be supported by the previous literature so that it would be more conclusive or more, what do you call this, reliable. And also, conclusion, sabi daw nila, should not start with such words as in summary or in conclusion. Kasi given na nga naman, parang yung an assessment of, alam mo na conclusion, lalagay mo pa in conclusion. This does not appear scholarly if you're going to use this as a start of your conclusion in a summary or in a conclusion. Okay? Matatapos po rin itong topic na to. Under implications and recommendation, which is the last part of chapter 5, is in some schools, there are no implications. They have only recommendations. But in our school, we have implications. So implications actually are the contributions of your study based on the results. So this contribution should be addressed to the beneficiaries of the study that you have mentioned under significance of the study. Diba? Sinabi niyo doon. The following would be benefited by this study. Let's say, accountancy department. What would be the contribution of your paper to the accountancy department? Dito po namin yan nilagay. Now, for the recommendation, we usually state here the proposed remedies to decrease the limitations. Ayan. Again, the recommendation should be database. It should not come from the blue. Hindi yung basta makarecommend lang ang bata. Ha? Kailangan may basis na mention sa papel na ito ang kulang sa department. That means that would be one of your bases for doing your recommendations. And of course, the last that you have to do is your abstract. Ito po yung huli, hindi po siyang nauuna. Yung iba po kasi kung gumawa, nauuna yung abstract. It is the last that should be done. But similar to introduction to a research title, introduction, abstract is also one of the section that is read the most. So, the title, the abstract, and the introduction must capture the reader's attention. Dapat, it is also something which may sound interesting, diba? These are the differences between the two. But Do not repeat what you have written in your abstract to the introduction. Dapat magkaiba sila ng laman. Kasi these two are consecutive in order. So pag nabasa sa abstract, it should be different from the introduction. Yeah. These are the responsibilities of a thesis teacher before, during, and after the defense. This is applicable for final oral defense and also proposal defense. You have to read the final draft and work of your students and suggest revision. Kaya dapat dito po makikita, if you are really a passionate teacher, talaga hong mahirap magturo ng research. Pag seryosoan lang, pag seryoso. Guide them on the presentation dynamics. That means, what should be the contents of your PowerPoint presentation? What would be the font size? What is the rule? You can make a discussion on the 7-7 rule of presenting your PowerPoint. And then, what else? The font size. What should be the contents? Hindi mo pwedeng ilagay yung buong chapter 1 to 5. Yeah. What should be needed? And how are you going to divide it among the members of the group? You have to inform them of the appropriate attire. Bawal ang maong, bawal ang t-shirt, bawal ang rubber shoes. Yeah, mga ganyan, di ba? And then, you have your name tag so that you can easily identify by the panelists. You attend also during the proposal defense and final oral defense. Sometimes one of the members of the group would be responsible for note taking or for taking down of notes. But usually po, if I'm the teacher, I'm the one who's taking down the notes so that they can concentrate on the defense. After all, you can also learn from the comments and suggestions of the panelists. So in the nutshell, we can say that the structure of thesis is composed of interdependent steps that will help us find answers and solutions to the problems. However, it is important that the teachers must realize that students should be able to focus on analyzing and synthesizing the information rather than the mechanics. Although it is important that you know the process, because you cannot prepare the thesis without knowing the process. But their students must focus on the analytical, because that is the course expected learning outcome, diba? That they have to develop their competencies during the process. Do not be afraid to do research. Doing research is not difficult as you think, because we are already doing research even if we don't know it. Everyone is a researcher. This pandemic has probably changed the way we think about research, but despite this paradigm shift and these uncertainties, I know that educators will agree with me that learning must go on amidst these trying times. But considering that there are time and mobility constraints, it is important that the researchers, the research teachers, must be flexible and adaptive towards a better norm. Do not afraid to teach research, because there is no unique way to teach research. We do not only learn by doing, we also learn by teaching. What is important is we must always do the right thing. And that right thing is, in terms of teaching and guiding our students, we stay committed to stay in touch with our students throughout the completion of the paper. Do not afraid to do research, because everything can be learned. You see, you should not also be afraid, as I have said, to teach research. You see, every accountant can teach FAR. They can teach a FAR. They can teach MAS. They can teach auditing, taxation. But only a handful of accountants can teach research. You know what I mean? Yes, teaching research will make you different from the accounting teachers. So with that, I would like to leave you the quotes from Charles Darwin. This is in the context of the challenges that you will face as a new researcher and as a new research teacher towards a better normal. And he says, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the attendees. Thank you to PICPA. Thank you to PICPA Foundation, to NACPAE. Thank you very much. Keep safe, everyone.
Thank you
Who's
very
Dano?
Thank you very much, Doc Fe. Opo, ayan. So, before we proceed po, ayan, congratulations, Doc Fe. You were able to, finish this
Finish.
hanggang dulo. Ayan, with God's grace po. Ayan. Before we formally transfer to the next part or next speakers, we would like to ask your assistance, Doc Fe, for our poll questions po. Earlier, we launched our poll, first two questions for the poll. So we'll have the first one po, no, let's ask po muna what is the correct answer for this one. So, Doctor, we launched the result. I hope you can see it po. So, we'd like to ask your assistance in providing us the best answer for this one.
The answer is letter E, both A and B.
Letter E. So
A is a comparative, and then the other one is causal. Causal. Correlational yung letter A, B is causal comparative. Not all of the above. This one, should we continue doing research? It is simply an essay, okay? So it's not all of the above. It is letter E, both A and B.
all right. So earlier also we launched the second poll question. So let's try to ask also your assistance on this one. So we have the results here. So majority of our participants answered letter B for this question.
Yes, it is correct. It's a mediating or intervening, because it is not actually the intelligent quotient relation. The independent variable here is the hours of study and the examination score. But the mediating is the intelligent quotient. Okay, its answer is letter B.
Thank you po. So I think we have some more couple of questions left. So let's launch our third question. Again, we encourage our participants to answer this particular poll question. So it's already launched. So okay, so the question, let me read. A number of practice problems completed blank. The relationship between the hours of study and the examination score. So A, moderates. B, mediates. C, either A or B, or letter D, neither A nor B. So as of this moment, we have received 50% responses from our attendees. So again, let me remind everyone that your participation in the poll questions is a requirement for you to secure or have your certificate of attendance. Okay, so we have here 70% already. So I think we can end the poll now. All right, so let's end the poll. Let's share the results. Doc Fe,
I'm sorry, Mark. I stand corrected.
Apo.
For the previous question, it should be moderates. For the first one, intelligent quotient.
All right, so let's
may either increase or decrease. So it's a moderates. But this time,
so for the first one, the first one po, the intelligent quotients po, the answer is letter
A.
A po, ayan.
Yeah.
Moderates po. Okay, let me show the next question po, stop result. Then question number 3 po. Number 3, share results. So the answer for number 3 is the number
letter
of practice problem. Ayan,
it should be letter B. Mediates.
Okay, mediates. All right. So 24% of our participants got this correctly, mediates. Okay, so next poll question po tayo. Number 4. So let me read the question. Given the interplay of activity level as independent variable and the weight gain as a dependent variable, how will you classify age as one of the variables? So A, is it a moderating variable? B, is it a mediating variable? C, a confounding variable? Or D, an intervening variable? So as of this moment, we already received 30% responses from our participants, and we're still waiting for others. So again, let me remind everyone that this is a requirement for you to have your certificate of attendance for this particular webinar. So we'd like to thank again our generous partners for this event, the PICPA Foundation Incorporated, and the and the National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education. Right? So I think we can end the poll now, Dr. So let's show the results.
The answer is confounding variable. Confounding variable, because weight gain is related to age, and age will also affect, what's the other variable, which is the dependent?
Weight gain and activity level.
Dependent variable is, weight gain is the dependent.
Dependent, yes ma'am. Activity level is the independent.
Level is the independent. Yeah. So the question is, how will you classify age? Age is a confounding variable because it is related to activity level. And at the same time, age will affect the weight gain. So it's a confounding. So it's 18% who got it right.
All right. Thank you, Dr.
At 18%.
All right. So let's launch the next poll question on this one. We still have 2 more and then we proceed to the next one. Let's launch the poll question. So we could also provide opportunity for those who missed the earlier poll questions for them to earn their certificate of attendance. Right? So which of the following is a quantitative research? Letter A, does accountant's salary improve his teaching performance? Very relevant. No? Letter B, is there a relationship between educational attainment and the teaching skills of CPA? So gumagaling daw ba kapag mas mataas ang achievement or attainment? Letter C, neither A nor B, or letter D, both A and B. So as of this moment, we have received 50% votes or responses from our participants this morning. So we are about to close. Please cast your votes now. All right, so 5 more seconds. 3, 2, and let's now end the poll question and let's share the results. So most of our participants answered letter A. So Doc Fe?
The correct answer is letter D. Letter A is causal, comparative, and letter B is correlational. These 2 are problem-oriented research. Therefore, both are quantitative.
Ayan,
You
so
will make use of quantitative approach.
Ayan,
Numbers.
so, all right, thank you very much, Doc Fe. So again, these 2 are both quantitative and both will require quantitative and both will require the presence of a hypothesis. Ayan, so let's stop the share result. Last poll question for our speaker this morning. Poll question reads, which of the following is a qualitative research? Quali naman po, qualitative research. Okay, so what are the challenges experienced by new CPA academician? Letter A. Letter B, which is a better auditor, male or female accountants? Letter C, either A or B, or letter D, both A and B. All right, so keep your votes coming. So we have, as of the moment, received 50% responses. So we're thankful for your active participation in this poll question. No? And thank you for your comments also and your questions, which are to be discussed later in our or during our open forum. Okay, so we have received almost 80% already. So I think we can end our poll now. So 5 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Voting lines are now officially closed. All right. So let's now have our result for the last poll question. Let's ask. So majority of the respondents or our participants answered letter D, both A and B. So Doc Fe, can we ask your answer for this one?
The correct answer is letter A. Letter A. Because letter B can be enumerated. Diba? Which is better. You just simply enumerate the characteristics or the qualities of the male accountants and female accountants. It is not a researchable topic. It is very shallow. So the correct answer is letter A. Congratulations to the 26%.
Yes, congratulations to the 26% who answered it correctly. Thank you very much, Doc Fe. So let's stop the poll results. And then moving forward, again, we would like to thank Dr. Pe for that very engaging, enlightening, and empowering discussion on facilitating the learner's research journey into a better normal. So let's give our resource speaker our warmest virtual round of applause. Moving forward, our next resource speaker for the topic Good Practices and Thesis Advising is a certified public accountant who specializes in accounting, auditing, and research. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Accountancy degree and her Master in Business Administration degree from the University of San Jose Recoletos. She is currently serving her alma mater as a full-time faculty member. She is a CPA reviewer of the USJR Integrated Review and Professional Review Training Center, or the PRTC, in auditing theory. She is also an active member of both the National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education and the PICPA Research and Development Committee. So we have here as one of our speakers for this topic, Professor Christine June D. Uy. Let's also introduce our speaker. Another speaker for this session is who will handle or who will discuss the good practices in thesis paneling. So she is a certified public accountant who specializes in both accounting and research. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Accountancy degree and her Master of Science in Business Administration degree from St. Louis University. She earned her Doctor of Philosophy in Management degree from the University of Cordilleras, formerly known as the Baguio Colleges Foundation. She is currently the department head for accountancy of St. Louis University, where she teaches not only in the undergrad but also in the graduate program of the same university. She specializes in financial and management accounting, investment analysis, and management, as well as research-related courses. She is also an active member of both the National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education and PICPA Research and Development Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, let us also welcome Professor Elvira D. Dacayao, PhD. Let us give her also a warm round of applause. So for the next presentation, let's maybe call on Professor Christine June Uy to have her presentation. Professor Uy.
Thank you very much, Sir Mark. May I just get the confirmation that the screen share is successful, Sir Mark?
Yes, we can see your screen and we can hear you loud and clear. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Sir Mark. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Buntag sa tanan. Magandang umaga po sa lahat. Greetings all the way from the Queen City of the South. I know that since yesterday, we have had a lot of talks and presentations, and it's already day 2 of our summit. And I am kind of hoping that at this point, we have least to embark on our own research journey, or if we have already embarked on one, then somehow to go further. At this point, before I do start my talk, and I would like to thank Sir Mark for the generous introduction, allow me to have some sort of a GTKY first, so getting to know you muna tayo, okay, before we delve into the technicalities of what is a faculty research advisor. And to do that, I am inviting you to paint a picture with me. So imagine that right at this very moment, your phone rang or you have a knock on the door, and there's this eager group of student researchers asking you to please be their faculty research advisor. Now, which of the following 3 personas do you think you would most likely relate with? Will you be the cheerful and eager cat? Or perhaps the timid and quite unsure panda? Or would you be the scared puppy? Okay, so be honest. put it in the chat box. Let me know if there is a group of students before you right now asking you to please be their research advisor. Which of the three do you think you would most likely relate to? Okay, kayo ba yung medyo confident, very excited, very happy? All right, very good. I'm seeing some very interesting answers in the chat box. Or are you the more timid, parang I'm not yet sure kung kaya ko ba, pero I'm willing to give it a try? Or there's somebody who said scared puppy. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for your candidness. Whenever I start a talk, I always like to get a feel of my audience, and it's more difficult in a webinar, right? Because we never get to see you. But thank you for the candidness. Thank you for the answer. And because I said GTKY ito, so getting to know you. So my turn naman, allow me to give a brief introduction of myself. Of course, Sir Mark already has introduced me. I am Christine, and I am a member of the faculty of USJR, all the way here in the Queen City of the South, Cebu City. And I am also a PRTC reviewer for auditing theory. Hindi po yan picture ng campus namin. Kaya lang we've been cooped up in our homes for so long. I think it would be nice to see a picture outdoors now. I am, by the invitation of Doc Phil Tugas, a member of the PICPA and PICPA Foundation Research Development Committee. And it is in that capacity that I am here this morning to share with you some of the good practices in thesis advising. Okay, allow me to share with you as well, if I were to answer, if I was the cheerful cat or the timid panda or the scared puppy, I have to say somewhere in between the panda and the cat. I am not yet that confident so as to ask students to come and have me as your research advisor, but I am still still really very much willing to learn. We all had a grand time with DocFest Talk kanina, and I was so grateful that we started with that. Actually, yesterday we had a very good keynote speech, and it talked mainly about how we need to institutionalize and have the necessary administrative support for research. And then kanina, with Dr. Ochatarana's talk, we were given a glimpse into what it would be like to be a research teacher. And so for my talk this morning, and because I'm sharing this time slot with Dr. Albi, so this is going to be quite a short talk, allow me to set our expectations. So I shall start by sharing with you some guidelines on faculty research advising. And these guidelines are patterned from the promotorship modality of the BA undergraduate programs of St. Louis University in Baguio. Thanks to the generosity of Dr. Albi Dacayo for sharing this with us. So these guidelines became our talking points in the focus group discussion. And then I'm also going to share with you the inputs from the FGD. So the FGD was participated in by 6 universities, namely the De La Salle University, the University of Santo Tomas. We also had Far Eastern University, and of course, St. Louis University in Baguio, and then the University of San Jose Recoletos in Cebu City, and the University of St. La Salle in Bacolod. So it was a very intimate focus group discussion, and I'm hoping and I'm wishing there will be future focus group discussions that would have more
may picture taking pa.
representations. Okay.
Matapos ko rin po na.
Okay, all right. So after the guidelines, I shall be sharing with you the inputs from the FGD. Now, perhaps it would be a good time to inform the audience that what I'm going to share are not prescriptive. So we are not prescribing that these should be the things that you would do in your own institutions. We have to understand that we exist in different organizational setups. We have different, we are different in terms of HEI size, for example, and the number of students. So quite obviously the practices will differ according to these nuances. But it is our hope from the committee that we will be able to assess and evaluate which of these practices might work for you. Okay, so let's get started. I think the big question really is, what is the role of a faculty research advisor, right? I did my own little research on this one, and surprisingly, I found out that across the globe, there seems to be this global mystery as to what really is a faculty research advisor. In fact, there have been a number of researches that were done in order to examine and investigate, to demystify what really is the role of a faculty research advisor. allow me to present to you the guideline that we used as one of our talking points during our focus group discussion. So the guideline was very specific in saying that the faculty research advisor should not just lecture or advise his or her student team members or on research matters. Instead, the faculty research advisor is seen to be taking an active role as a lead researcher who then directs the entire research process from conceptualization, of course, down to the completion. And I'm pretty sure if you answered scared puppy a while back, you'll be even more scared with this one. Am I right? It seems like such a huge task. Admittedly, this is, if we've ever said at one point in time, start with the end in mind, then this is the end in mind. This will be our vision. This will be our goal. That hopefully we will be able to really own being a lead researcher. However, let's be honest, not all HEIs are already in this level. And sometimes it's quite frustrating when we attend research seminars or talks about researches and then, be shown all of these sophisticated practices and structures already in place. And so let us then try to take a look at what came about in the FGD and what's it like, actually, what it's actually like in the institutions that offer research. And I'd say the key to that, in order for us to answer what really is the role of a faculty research advisor, is to take a look at the structure. We have, this is what I learned during the FGD, we have different structures. It would be nice if at one point in time, maybe after a series of FGDs, NACPAE and PICPA can come up with a recommended structure, but at this point, we have different structures. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but there are structures as simple as, or as uncomplicated as, the research teacher being the research advisor as well of all, the research team under his or her class. And then this research advisor, who also happens to be the research teacher, remember, also gets to be the editor, the grammarian, the counselor, sometimes even to the point of personal counseling. And quite admittedly, I think almost all HEIs have adapted at one point in time or another that particular structure. And most often than not, that really gives the research teacher that added motivation and that added goal, to really better himself or herself at being an expert in research, because sa kanya lahat, di ba? But then quite understandably also, this has deterred and scared, away some, especially pag new faculty or even the more tenured faculty. When they see the structure, and the structure is like that, they tend to shy away from research. Ito yung lumalabas yung mga sentiments na, naku, nakakapagod if you are a research teacher. Hindi ka nakakatulog. Yung mga bata pumupunta sa bahay, kailangan mo mag-check from early in the morning to late in the evening. Minsan pa nga, from early in the morning to early in the morning din, di ba? Kasi wala nang tulugan. So, like I said, it would depend on the structure. So in that case, if that's the structure, then the research advisor is seen to be doing almost everything. The knowledge transfer, when, for example, would discuss to the students as to how to write a research paper, etc., etc., etc. However, there are also some practices that we found out during the focused group that could be worth looking into. And some of these practices involve the presence of what we call as a research coordinator. Now, the research coordinator serves as the research teacher. So all of the things that were discussed by Doc Fe kanina, of course, she was discussing from the hat, of course, of a research teacher. So if the structure that you would like to follow is one where there is a research coordinator, then it will be the research coordinator who will be the research teacher. So magkaiba si coordinator, iba yung teacher from the advisor. So si coordinator, kasi nga siya yung research teacher, it will be the coordinator who will create and organize the research teams and then will introduce the defined research agenda. So kailangan may defined research agenda, which will be introduced by the research teacher to the students, of course. And because this particular position is that of a research teacher, ordinarily given as a teaching load, sa kanya. So it will be the research coordinator who will give the technical inputs, okay, or the inputs on the technical rigors of writing the research. So everything that was discussed kanina, from coming up with a topic to how to write the introduction, for example, what are the available research methods that you have, how do you perform a review of related literature, how do you cite, what is APA format, what should go into this section and what should not. So basically, these things are taken care of by the research coordinator. If it's necessary to give assignments and quizzes, siya rin yung nagbibigay, siya yung nag-i-evaluate preliminarily ng mga research topics of the teams. So normally the practice is to ask the teams to come up with anywhere from 3 to 15 research topics, which will then be preliminarily assessed by the research coordinator. So si research coordinator din yung nagsiset ng timeline for the submission of the deliverables. So kunwari, for the prelim period, dapat na-submit na all the way up to, say for example, review of related literature. Okay, including the timeline for when the proposal hearing is supposed to be done. Okay, and then, because siya ngayong teacher, siya din yung nagko-compute ng grades. So basically, the research coordinator acts as like, parang siya yung facilitator. Okay, siya din yung transferer ng knowledge. Kasi nga, siya yung research teacher. Because of this, it was revealed in the FGD that some research coordinators are not even necessarily certified public accountants. Okay? Ang kailangan kasi sa research coordinator is dapat, in effect, may expertise and mastery talaga siya in the technical aspects of writing a research. And siguro this practice came about because, quite admittedly, sabi nga ni Doc Fe, almost any CPA can teach auditing, taxation, FAR, but only a handful can teach research. So because of that particular limitation, so this practice came about, that we will have a research coordinator who is good in research, okay, magaling siya sa research, alam niya kung paano mag-research. And of course, if that person is also a CPA, then that's a perfect match. Pero paano pag wala pang CPA na ready? Paano pag lahat ng faculty mo ay nasa scared puppy level pa? Okay, so in order to help build that confidence, one such practice is to have that research coordinator so that along the way, we could build and we could capacitate our CPA faculty. And of course, it is our hope in the future that these CPA faculty can also be the research coordinator. Okay, if you would also notice, sabi ko, especially in number 7, set the timeline, especially for the proposal hearings. Why up to the proposal hearing? If we take a look at the curriculum, the new curriculum for the BSA program, may 6 units na tayo of research. So to those of us who are doing research, parang wow, it's a very big relief. Imagine cramming everything into 3 units, diba? So this time, we're given 6 units of research. But if you look at the CMO, it was actually very specific that in the case of accounting research methods, hindi naman siya kailangan, hindi nakalagay doon na kailangan CPA. But in the case of accountancy research, ibig sabihin yung part 2, that is where it is specified in the CMO na kailangan certified public accountant talaga. So in this case, if you're like, my university and other HEIs out there na medyo nangangapa pa ng konti sa research. So parang binigyan tayo ng 1 SEM to help capacitate. Kasi pagdating ng research 2, kailangan CPA na talaga yung magka-handle. Okay, so one of the good practices is perhaps to have this one for the meantime until eventually nasa cheerful and eager cat level na tayong lahat. Okay, so then after the research coordinator, again, this is the structure of that came out in the FGD, not prescriptive at all, just evaluate if this could work for you. Meron ding tinatawag na area or cluster head. So si area or cluster head, you kind of like imagine para siyang chair. Okay, he's like a chair of the faculty experts or faculty advisors on a specific research theme. So what do I mean by this? It will depend on your agenda, but if kunwari you're pushing for research to be conducted across that would cover the 4 sectors of practice. And so therefore you might have an area or cluster head for accounting education, another area or cluster head for public practice, and so on. So parang siya yung nagiging chair doon sa mga advisors under a specific theme. So it will be the area or the cluster head who will deliberate further on the research topics proposed by the research teams. Kasi nga, di ba, it was initially vetted already by the research coordinator. So streamline kung ano yung more or less recommended by the research coordinator. So ibibigay ngayon sa area or cluster head, and then further deliberated on by the area or cluster head. And then the area or cluster head will then endorse or recommend the particular team to a research advisor. Okay, so if you would notice, unlike in the first structure, where the research teacher is also the advisor, so parang napaka-short ng line, from the knowledge transferring to the co-creating of the knowledge. In this particular structure, the cluster head then gets to do a second evaluation of the topics. And then, dito na ngayon papasok si research advisor. So basically, the research advisor is chosen as a mentor of the research team, and chosen siya dahil sa kanyang specialization. If you have already more or less a structured research culture, if your institution has already started embracing the research culture and your members of the faculty have already been doing research, then that means it would also be helpful if you will have a database of the researches conducted by a specific faculty, by a specific professor, so that it will be easier for the student researchers to determine kung sino yung expert sa area na yan. But again, if nasa scared puppy level pa tayo, kung hindi pa masyadong firm yung ating research culture, then the specialization could actually be the niche, kung ano ba yung, siguro let's just say, kung ano ba yung mga subjects na tinuturo ng teacher. So in my case, for example, since I am teaching auditing theory, so if there are researches on auditing, then it might be referred to me. And because I have also done some researches in the past with regards accounting education, so whenever there is a team that proposes a research on accounting education, then it also gets referred to me and as the advisor. So kasi nga sabi ni Doc Edralyn kahapon, di ba, we need to define our niche. Hindi po pwede na lahat. Okay? We need to have that specialization. And these student researchers are then endorsed to a research advisor based on the specialization. And again, the research advisor serves as the mentor and should be actively involved in the conceptualization, to the conduct, and then the completion of the research. It is the research advisor's privilege to bring out the potential, the scholarly potential of their mentees. At this point, I would like to share something that was also shared to me by Doc LB. I really found this one quite insightful and interesting. And siguro at this point, we're going to kind of do some, some kind of examination of conscience. Okay, shared by Doc LB, yung 14 demandments for thesis advisors. So let's try to examine our conscience. If we've ever sat as a thesis advisor, these 14 commandments. First, thou shalt not collect your fees directly from your advisee. Kailangan doon ibabayad sa accounting office. Kasi minsan, di ba, napaka-awkward. Pag kunwari, masyado mong pinahirapan yung advisee mo, hindi kayo, there's some kind of an argument, and then tapos aabutan ka ng sobre for your fee. Parang, even in auditing, di ba, meron tayong independence in mind, independence in appearance. So, it would help further our professional relationship with our advisee if the payment is through the accounting office. Okay, so as much as possible, avoid yung sa sobre tapos personal na ibibigay. Okay, second, thou shalt not accept a thesis advisee whose field of specialization is not within your sphere of knowledge or competence. Because I'm an auditing theory teacher, I normally make references to auditing concepts. So in PSQC1, sabi sa PSQC1, if you are to accept a new client or a new engagement, you have to assess first whether you are competent to perform the engagement. So similar lang din to thesis advising. So pag hindi naman natin area of specialization or we are not competent, okay, in that particular topic, so politely decline the invitation. You shall not accept, much less demand, gifts or tokens of gratitude from your advisee. At some point, parang napapaisip ako, 14 commandments for thesis advisors ba ito or code of ethics for professional accountants? Diba? So, di daw po tayo as much as possible, but should not accept, much less demand Okay, these gifts or tokens. You shall not tolerate any incidents of plagiarism. So plagiarism is a very serious academic offense, as was previously discussed by Doc Fed. So we should not tolerate any of that. You shall not talk about the limitations and weakness of your advisee with other advisors or other people. Not only will it make them look bad, it will also make you look bad. So whatever frustrations it is that you have with your advisees, and if you've ever tried thesis advising before, you know what I'm talking about. So just keep it between you and your advisee. You shall not accept more advices than you can effectively handle. We owe it to our advisees to give them the best of ourselves. And so therefore, do not accept more than you can handle. Okay, so do not spread yourself too thin. Okay, eto, I don't know kung may mga guilty ba nito, but since it's examination of conscience time, you shall not write the research report of your advisee, not even a part of it, in spite of pressure. Okay, kasi I don't know if you ever encountered that, pero the pressure is real, kailangan nang masubmit, tapos yung advisee mo, bakit parang hindi niya maintindihan kung ano yung gusto mong isulat niya, and you might be tempted to say, sige, ako na lang magsusulat. Okay, so part of the demandments of a thesis advisor, do not write the research report of your advisee. Okay, you are an advisor for a reason. You shall not make changes to the research report without the consent of your advisee. Okay, you shall not make inconsistent suggestions. I know that you have encountered this so many times during the oral defense. Yung iba-iba yung sinasabi ng panelist, nakakalito, di ba? So imagine if rather than simply the panelist giving inconsistent suggestions, ikaw mismo na advisor, definitely confusion will be met by your advisee. So avoid making inconsistent suggestions. Thou shalt not use your advisor-advisee relationship as a leverage to ask for personal favors. We have to remember that faculty research advising is a professional endeavor, and as such, we are expected to act professionally. Okay? Thou shalt not break your appointments and other agreed arrangement with your advisee without duly informing them. Even if you're the advisor, you still have to respect as well the time of your advisees. You shall not be careless in reading and reviewing the manuscript drafts. Precisely the reason why you need to limit your number of advisees. Kasi if there's just too many of them, you won't be able to give due attention to the manuscript drafts of your advisee. Thou shalt not belittle or demean your advisee, even if kayong dalawa lang. Kasi respect begets respect. And you shall not forget to support the commitments to the search for truth. Denounce in strongest terms any attempt to frustrate or distort it, and act on that basis. Minsan kasi yung mga advices natin, when they propose a research topic, they already have a conclusion in mind. I don't know if you ever tried that, but then they propose a research topic, parang alam nila kung anong gusto nilang conclusion. And then sometimes the results of the data gathering and the data interpretation does not support that conclusion, to the point that sometimes parang they feel that parang no purpose yung research nila if you don't get to meet what the expected conclusion is. So we have to be able to guide our advisees into making sure that we let the results, we let the data speak. We do not tamper with whatever the results are. Bakit? When we perform research, we are committed to the search for truth, even when that truth is not what you expected it to be. Okay, so natuwa talaga ako dito sa 14 demandments for thesis advisors. I hope that you had fun having your own examination of conscience with the 14 demandments. And so what is the role nga ba of the faculty research advisor? Well, basically to fine-tune the research topic, because in our practice, normally the students come to us already with a research topic. We have to be actively involved in the brainstorming of this research topic to inspire and guide the researchers, and then of course to evaluate the research and whether ready na ba siya for proposal, and later on the final oral defense. Okay, so at this point, Sir Mark, let's launch our first poll. Let's take a poll. I also have it in my PowerPoint presentation, just so you could have, an advanced time to read. Sir Mark?
All right. Thank you very much. Let's launch the poll. This poll questions. I'm sorry. I'll just launch it. Relaunch the poll. Right. So here's the question. Let me read it. Which of the following is not one of the roles of a research faculty advisor? Okay. So letter A, to guide and inspire researchers. Letter B, to perform statistical analysis. Letter C, to evaluate the final research output. Or letter D, to assign responsibilities to the team members. So take note, the question is not one of the research as faculty advisor's role. Okay, so we have received 50%. So we'll just wait for a couple of seconds before we end our poll. So once again, let me remind everyone that your active participation in the poll questions is a requirement for you to be awarded your certificate of participation or your certificate of attendance. So as of this point, we have received 75%. For those who are using electronic gadgets other than laptops and desktops like cell phones, please make sure to click on the submit button or the button below, because your votes will not be casted if you fail to click that particular button. So below the question or the choices, there's a button there for your submission, right? Submit. I think the submit button or enter. I'm not sure with the term, but there's a button there below. So we have received 79%. So I think we can now end this poll session, poll question. And let's ask Professor Uy to answer this. So I'll share the results. All right, so it's already shared on the screen.
Thank
so,
you, Sir Mark. Sir Mark, para namang review, not yung hinahanap. Okay, so the correct answer is letter B. Tama. A lot of we, as a research advisor, it is not actually one of our roles to be the one to perform the statistical analysis itself. Maraming mga researchers and research advisors na, or yung invited to become a research advisor, tapos natatakot tayo, tapos the main fear actually stems from the statistical part. Okay, so I don't know about you, but for my experience, usually, sinasabing, ayokong mag-advise ng research kasi I am not very well versed in statistics. Okay, so we have to understand that the statistical part can actually be aided. Of course, we need to know the basic, but then kung medyo complicated yung statistics, we could actually need the help of a statistician to help us understand the many data that is being given to us by the researchers. Okay, thank you very much, Sir Mark, and congratulations doon sa ating 65% who got the correct answer. Ibig sabihin, Sir Mark, hindi pa sila gutom. They still have the energy.
Yes,
Okay, so thank you, Sir Mark. Let me then continue because I think Doc Alvi is also very excited to give her part of the talk. So let me continue with what are the specific responsibilities ni faculty advisor. Okay, so kanina we're talking about parang the general responsibility of the faculty advisor. So this time dun tayo sa specific. Okay, so a lead researcher, kasi nga sabi ng guideline, lead researcher. So because lead researcher, yung faculty advisor, then the faculty advisor is expected to identify a topic beforehand. Okay, tapos siguro yung reaction yung, wait, hindi naman yan yung practice namin. Okay, that's okay. So per the results of the FGD, this is what we gathered. Normally, what will happen is that students have already identified what they want to research on. And then the said topics, okay, the said topics have already been initially vetted by the research coordinator and endorsed by the area or the cluster head. Now, the presence of the research coordinator and the area of the cluster or cluster head will, of course, also depend on the manpower that you have. Kasi nga, usually, if we talk about full-time faculty members na certified public accountants, pera na lang dun sa talagang mga malalaking universities, usually we only have a handful din. Like in our case, parang less than 10. So, minsan naiisip mo, ang hirap naman pag may cluster head ka pa, tapos less than 10 lang naman kayo. So again, custom fit it according to the peculiarities in your institution. But basically, the practice is, normally the practice is that may mga research topics na yung mga students and then preliminarily vetted na by the research coordinator. Okay, and then as a lead researcher, the faculty research advisor is also expected to spearhead the development of the research proposal and oversee the implementation. So as a reminder lang, yung envision po natin na output for research 1 or the accounting research methods is the proposal. And I think Doc Fe has already discussed kanina ano yung mga parts ng proposal. And then for research 2, of course, yung accountancy research, our envisioned output is the full paper. So ibig sabihin, if you have accepted a team as your advisee or as your advisees, then you have to be committed to see it through from the proposal all the way to the completion of the research paper. The faculty research advisor is also the one who will assign the appropriate responsibilities to the team members and ensure that these will be carried out accordingly, thus facilitating the learning process of the students. So in the structure that we have shared, na my research coordinator, my area cluster head, si research coordinator simply forms the team. Pero when it comes to delegating or when it comes to assigning the responsibilities, that will be the work of the faculty advisor. Okay, the faculty advisor again is expected to be there during the brainstorming sessions. When you brainstorm, this will also give you an idea more or less of the different capabilities and strengths and also weaknesses of your advisees. This is where you will provide guidance in terms of the search for the related literature. And so as you would notice, even if my research coordinator tayo, it is also expected that we have a working knowledge of research, of how to conduct research, because we are supposed to mentor the students as well in that. And then you could also set your own timeline in order to meet the timeline set by the research teacher or the research coordinator, and then make a follow-up on the deliverables to ensure timely submission. So it is then expected that the faculty research advisor will regularly meet with his or her mentees. The research advisor will also serve as the main presenter. Nako, sa tingin ko yung mga scared puppies talagang naka-retreat na. Okay, so again, don't worry. These are just the ideal. Okay, this is just the ideal na magiging main presenter siya. Bakit siya magiging main presenter? Kasi siya yung lead researcher. Kaya lang, in practice, as we found out in the results of the FGD, parang divided yung body when it comes to this particular practice. And I must say, it will then depend on your institutional policy. Kasi may mga institutions na, for them, bawal maging part ng authors. Okay, so alternatively, you can assign a non-speaking role. Okay, kasi pag main, before I go to the authorship, kasi pag main presenter, pag ginawa mong main presenter si faculty research advisor during the oral defense, can you imagine the dynamic between the faculty research advisor and the panelists? Okay, baka, we don't want it to happen, but it's a possibility. It might become a game of who's better, the faculty research advisor or the panelist. And we do not want that to happen. So, and besides, it will be the students who would be graded. So, and because they are to be graded, dapat they should have the spotlight as well during the oral defense. So as an option to this particular guideline, you could also assign a non-speaking role to the faculty advisor. And the faculty advisor could just sit as a faculty advisor during the oral defense and then take down notes and then discuss this with the team afterwards. That way, walang unnecessary clash between a faculty research advisor and an expert panel. Okay? And then should serve as the main author. So ito yung sabi kong letter D and E, medyo divided yung focused group when it comes to the practice relating to this. Kasi it will depend on your institutional policy. May mga schools, may mga HEIs who do not allow that the faculty member or the advisor is part of the authors. Okay, may mga schools na hindi nag-allow. And then there are schools and HEIs in order to encourage perhaps productivity and perhaps to build confidence doon sa faculty na hindi niya kailangan gawin ang research na mag-isa lang siya at the very first time na ginagawa niya yung research. So pwede siyang mag-team up doon sa kanyang mentees, sa kanyang advisees and become part of one of the authors. So again, it will depend on the policy of your institution and it will also depend on your involvement. So depending on the involvement of the advisor and the school policy, the advisor may be the principal author, or it could be the first author, or it could be the corresponding author. Kasi in some bodies of knowledge, magkaiba si first author tsaka si corresponding author. So, could be the principal author or the first author, kung pwede mo na siyang i-assign as the corresponding author. In some practices that we have encountered during the FGD, yung practice naman ng ibang HEIs, is to have the faculty as the last author. Okay. In cases whereby the faculty is part of one of the authors, in cases of co-authorship, one very good practice that was shared with us during the FGD is that there should be a co-authorship consent form that must be executed. And this co-authorship consent form has a set of guidelines on the required level of involvement ng faculty research advisor. Kasi quite admittedly, hindi naman lahat ng faculty research advisors are super into it, di ba? So, some faculty research advisors, parang, now you see them, now you don't. So, in order to arrest the problem, baka feel ng students napaka-unfair naman, automatically part na siya, kahit na hindi masyadong ganun yung involvement. So, in order to arrest that problem, may co-authorship consent form. And this co-authorship consent form will include the guidelines, okay, to make both the students and the faculty advisor aware kung ano ba yung requirements or minimum requirements so that you will be part of the authors. Okay, so Sir Mark, to ensure nagising pa yung ating mga participants, let's launch the second poll.
All right, so let's launch our second poll. Second question, right? So we have here, let me read the poll question. Which of the following is the most common way to establish the order of the authors of a research paper? So letter A is alphabetical, letter B, negotiated order, letter C, relative contribution, or letter D, institutional position. So very great question, no? Professor Uy, yeah.
Very interesting yung mga sagot.
Yes, I'm quite interested actually with the responses, no?
Parang exciting.
Yes. So we're waiting for some more participants to answer the poll question. So we have received 70% of responses from our attendees. So we'll close it in 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Voting lines are now officially closed. All right. So let's now share the results.
What can you say, Sir Mark? Napaka-interesting ng results.
Yes.
I think the results are already shared to the attendees now. Yes, so as you would see, 41% of those who answered actually went for alphabetical, and the second highest is 34% with relative contribution. Yung correct answer po is letter C, relative contribution. Kasi I think that, but I understand, Sir Mark, bakit majority went for letter A. Kasi normally for student researches, sometimes they're just told, sige, arrange na lang alphabetically based on your family name. But the ideal really, and the most common really, especially in terms of publication, is to arrange it based on the relative contribution. Kasi may flair, may privilege kung ikaw yung first author. Kasi the first author means you are the most involved. And so therefore, pag may mga questions regarding the research, sino yung tatawagan, sino yung tatanungin, it will be the first author. So relative contribution, yung pinaka-common and the most ideal way. Kaya nga minsan may negotiated order. Yung negotiated order actually looks into also the politics that is present within a research team. So you get to negotiate. Sige, ako naman yung first principal author para naman pag may mag-cite, pangalan ko yung makikita o ma-attribute sa akin kaagad. So looking into or for example, if you're a member of the faculty and one of the requirements for the ranking is that dapat ikaw yung primary author, so baka may negotiated order, may politics na nangyayari, which is of course highly discouraged. So the most ideal and the most objective is actually to go for relative contribution. Interesting din, Sir Mark, yung institutional position.
Yes,
when it answer na
yes.
20%. Minsan kasi sinasabi pag department chair, automatic first author talaga. Okay, so while that has been the practice maybe of some HEIs, that is also highly discouraged. Kasi nga, in research, kaya nga sa research, normally, well, in the trainings that I've attended, we're normally asked to remove yung mga doctor, yung mga MBA, yung mga titles and positions. Kasi in research, we are seen as in an equal playing field. So it will be the relative contribution. Thank you, Sir Mark,
Thank
for
you.
launching the poll. Parang natuwa ako doon sa answers. Okay, malapit na tayong matapos, don't worry. Okay, sige. Now, I'll just make this one quicker. What are the student learning areas? So in terms of the student learning areas, we have to understand that as a faculty research advisor, we are mentors and we cannot give what we do not have. So whether we like it or not, if we are to sit as a faculty research advisor, we need to capacitate the faculty advisor. And how do we do that? We could send our faculty advisors to workshops and trainings. Okay, very, very important. We cannot be like the blind leading the blind. So at a certain point in time, we have to be trained, okay? Before the start of the semester, there has got to be an orientation for the faculty advisor. And then maybe you could also look at a mentor-mentee program or a senior faculty, junior faculty tandem. This is what was done in some of the schools that participated in the FGD. So parang my core researcher, and then this core researcher takes somebody under his or her wing. Maybe not yet a formal training talaga, but then this junior faculty might shadow or observe the core researcher. Okay, that's another way of learning. And then these are the areas which you are expected to mentor on, and so therefore should have a working knowledge on these things. The preparation of the research proposal, the formulation of the research problem, which was very, very well discussed by Doc Fe a while back, how to do literature search and survey, what's the appropriate means of gathering the data, the analysis, of course, the writing of the research manuscript, and the presentation of the research results. We have to be reminded that because we are going to mentor our advisees on many of these things, then we need to set a limit to the number of groups that the faculty advisor may advise. Okay, last poll, Sir Mark. Talagang parang, sige Sir Mark, last poll na ito.
All right, so let's launch our last poll question for Miss Christine. So I think it's already there. According to CHED CMO number 27, series of 2017, which of these two accounting research subjects must be handled by CPAs? Letter A, accounting research methods. Letter B, accountancy research. Letter C, both A and B. Or letter D, neither A nor B. Okay? So very interesting also because this is coming from our CHED CMO, right? Oh.
Yes, Sir Mark. Tsaka, I think a lot of the schools are already excited to launch their research subjects as well.
Yes, that also the PICPA and PICPA Foundation also will come into that part because we are actually doing an ongoing project on the research manuals, which will also be elaborated later on. So for the schools who would want to receive that, we would like to encourage you to be updated or be guided with the information that will be provided by PICPA and PICPA Foundation Research and Development Committee. So we have received 81% votes for this one, Professor Christine. So I think we can now end the poll.
Correct. And at 80 attendees, 60%, the answer was both A and B. But actually in the CMO, yung required po is the accountancy research. It's the part 2. Siya yung may asterisk doon. And then refer to this particular section of the CMO, which would require it to be a licensed certified public accountant. Kung kaya nga in the structure that we shared, there are some practices whereby the research coordinator is not necessarily a CPA. Kaya lang, of course, the dream would always be to capacitate enough CPA researchers to also handle both subjects. That would be the ideal setup, of course. Thank you very much, Sir Mark. I think a couple more slides and matatapos na talaga ako. So what are the responsibilities of the students? So quite obviously, to attend all the meetings, to actively do their assigned parts, to participate in the discussions, and to contribute to the research expenses. So panghuli na lang, what are the other practices that were shared in the FGD find that spark? How do you encourage members of the faculty to engage themselves in research? Many schools have already included research in the performance evaluation, but sometimes that is not enough. So you have to determine what tickles the fancy of your faculty. So in my case, for example, some of the faculty members I work with are quite young, and mas naiinganyo sila if travel yung pinag-uusapan. So if the school has a very good institutional support for research conferences, and then that might be the spark that you are looking for. Aim to inspire. Paano yan? You could ask the BSA students who have completed their research to present this to the junior BSA students. The organization of a research congress, okay, would also be helpful. And once you have found that spark and inspired both the students and the faculty, keep it going. You can create a database within the school to keep an inventory of the researches done. The schools could subscribe to e-journals. The use of Google Scholar, ResearchGate. You could create a research journal for your college. And finally, attend research conferences. For my experience, nakaka-inspire makinig doon sa mga researches done by other researchers. Okay, Sir Mark, and to the audience, thank you very much. That would be for guidelines on research advising. And then this time, from the advising part, let's now move on to the defense part. And for the guidelines on serving as panelists for oral defense, we will now have Doc. LV Dacayo from St. Louis University. Doc. LV?
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Christine Uy. So I am requesting Sir Alan to share our PowerPoint slide. So a pleasant good morning to each and everyone. Thank you, Sir Mark, for the kind introduction a while ago. This morning, I'd like to share some of the results of the PICPA and PICPA Foundation Research Committee output in helping faculty embrace research in the accountancy program. Okay, so the first FGD was actually held, no, not the first, but our FGD on focus on paneling was held last October 1, 2020. So it is participated in by 7 universities. We have De La Salle University, Far Eastern University, Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, St. Louis University, and University of St. La Salle Bacolod, as well as University of Santo Tomas. Okay, so I only prepared 15 slides overall. I know it's already lunchtime, so just bear with us. So that the 15 slides include already the poll question. So there are, the presentation would be first to share with you the result of the FGD. So I will presenting first the organizational structure, which as Dr. Edralyn has said, there are different levels of organizational structure in place in different universities. Some are already in place and are highly structured. Others, however, are still in their infancy stage. Not all universities have these 3 defense modality, which are your concept paper defense, proposal defense, and final paper defense. So our next, after determining the organizational structure, we have to align the research agenda. And some universities have already in place their research agenda. But if the university has not yet included this research agenda, we can actually get NACPA's proposed agenda, which are financial accounting and reporting, management services, auditing, assurance and technology, ethics and regulations, and accountancy education. So you can be able to choose from among this. Next, we go to the feasibility, viability, and manageability are assessed. So basically, the concept paper is really looking into the feasibility, viability, and manageability of the research paper. And how would we be able to look into this? It is through our review of related literature. Okay, so number 4 is the review of related literature, supported with review of related literature. And as was mentioned by Doc Fe, we have to know the gap, okay, through the review of related literature. So again, we have to keep abreast of our current work, determine the research gap, as well as taking into consideration the ethical implications. So under the concept paper, we can be able to determine if all of these are present. Next slide would be our proposal defense. Under this proposal defense, the first one is really to help our researchers to improve the paper. Since once you have already approved of the concept paper, then the next is to help it improve from guiding our researcher from point A to point B. So again, we have to look at the problem, the review of related literature, and the method. Okay, followed by, we have to see to it that we have also our pool of experts that we invite so that it can really improve. Okay, so a panelist can be invited from outsiders, depending on their expertise. As was mentioned by Professor Christine, do not accept as advisor, and even to sit as a panel, you have to know your own expertise. Another under proposal defense is your comment sheet should have to be given. Okay, so under this comment sheet, this was mentioned by Doc Fe a while ago, and she actually have samples of this comment sheet. This is very important because it summarizes all the comments by the panel members. Usually, under proposal defense, we don't have any numerical grades. So it is just a passing or a failing. Okay. A while ago also, as mentioned, the research format should be made available, whether it is the conventional or chapter, or if we have the publishable format. Now it depends on your institution on what you require as the research format. Usually, panel members do not spend much time under this research format because it is the advisor, through the help of the research coordinator, that would give the format. Okay. Next, we go to the last, which is the final defense. Okay. Under this final defense, we have to look at the alignment, the research objectives, the discussion of the results, conclusions, and recommendations, followed by since we are to use the same panel members should be sitting from the proposal up to the final defense, so that there will be alignment of all the things that they have been given. So there should not be any things that would come out not taken up under the initial discussions. Then, of course, plagiarism test before the final defense should have to be made. Then manuscript for final defense could be in the publishable format. Okay, revision sheet should have to be included with written comments. Then under this final defense, it could be minor, major revisions, failed, or redefense. Okay, and then one of the good practices that was shared during the FGD is there is a colloquium for 10 desk papers where there will be learning points for the juniors. This could also be an avenue for poster presentation of all the paper and all the research output of our students. Okay, now let's have the first poll question.
All right, so let's launch
Yes.
our first question. So it's launched already. So for let me read the question. For our accountancy students to embrace the culture of research, research panel members should be letter A, precipitous, letter B, dogmatist, letter C, solicitous, or letter D, impervious.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mark.
Opo.
One of the things that we have to learn also in thesis advising as well as in paneling is we have to improve or learn academic words and writings. So meaning we have to improve our vocabulary. So basically, what should be among these adjectives that we have here? Okay, what do you think is the one that we have to embrace as panel members? Okay, so mga new words na rin ito.
All right, so as of this point, we have received 70% responses from our participants. So I think we can now end our poll po, so we can
Yes,
read
po.
them the
Thank
answer.
you.
All right,
Yes,
so
thank you so much.
I'm now sharing the results. Dr. Lacayo.
Yes. Okay, tama po. So majority, 56% answered solicitous. Yes, that's correct. Okay, if another word for precipitous is hurried, rushed, or impulsive. For dogmatist, it is arrogant or intimidating. For impervious, it is unaffected or indifferent. So all of these adjectives are not the qualities of a panel member. So solicitous means you are showing interest, concern, and being supportive. Okay, so we have 4 new words for today. Thank you so much for your participation. Next, okay. So let's go to our next slide. The role now of panel members. So since it's lunchtime, I'm going through this. So each panel member is expected to have read the manuscript well to enable him or her to participate actively and engage in scholarly exchange of ideas. So what are the things that are expected that you can ask questions when you have read the manuscript? Whether the problem is properly identified, analyzed, and answered, whether the research design methodology approaches were appropriate and adequately followed, whether the data were properly, adequately treated, analyzed, and interpreted in accordance with existing knowledge. All these questions can really be asked and it would be answered if the panel members have read thoroughly the manuscript. It would be obvious, especially to our students, if the question of our panel members are not aligned with what was written by them. Okay, next one. Okay, so basically, a panel member's role is to test the candidate's mastery of the work. Therefore, he or she asks carefully prepared and written questions before the oral defense. So ask questions about research. Why did you choose this particular topic? Or what your inspiration was behind this study? It points out also positive aspects and inaccuracies in the manuscript. He has to prove using his convincing power to the panel that what you did is valuable for the society and was worth their time. He has to show originality of his study, that it can contribute to the existing body of knowledge. Okay, that's why a very comprehensive review of related literature and of course the logic behind this literature should have to be looked into. Okay. Next one, the panel members should also give suggestions, modifications about the points raised, makes the candidate feel at ease by eliciting what the candidate knows rather than what he does not know. He gives constructive criticism. He doesn't just say that is wrong. Every time you give a suggestion or you give a comment, you should at least give a suggestion so that it could really help the student, the research student. Okay, so it would be very frustrating if the panel member just give negative comments without giving alternative ways on how it can be improved. Okay, next one. Okay, so this would be our second poll question. Another, Sir Mark.
Yes, Doc Lacayo, we
Yes.
already launched the poll. So for the next question, let's read it. An academic conference or seminar for research presentations. So letter A is sorry. Letter B, colloquium. Letter C, recital. Letter D, gathering. Okay. So I think this one is also an interesting question, ma'am, no? Because
Yes.
some people are not really aware of the terminology used for
Correct.
academic conferences to make it
Yes.
to make it separate or different or set it apart from the usual conferences and seminars that we attend.
Yes.
Ayan. So there is
Okay.
actually a conference or seminar specifically for research presentations, right?
Yes.
So we have received almost 80% of the votes. So I think we can end our poll now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ayan. So let's share the results now. So we have 76% po, Doc.
Yes, tama. 76% got it correctly. So hindi pa gutom ang ating mga participants and audience. Thank you. Okay, so let's go now to the next slide. Okay. So the role again of is continuing the role of panel members. They have to assess the quality of the thesis, especially that in terms of whether it makes an original contribution, whether it is of publishable quality. A panelist has a moral obligation to approve any thesis that meets those conditions. Bawal po ang panel members na power tripping porque hindi nalagay ang kanyang mga suggestions, ayaw niya, okay? A panel member can judge the adequacy of the literature review or research evidence that supports the student's opinion or not. So it is also important that the panel member is aware and well-read of the existing literature, okay? Because he will be the one to help the candidate be able to direct, okay, what appropriate literature, what appropriate theory. So if you are well-read, you can contribute so much to the improvement of the paper. Then he or she can disagree with the student's proposal on the basis of arguments and evidence provided itself in the research paper in support of that argument. Okay, so you know the logic behind the arguments of the student. Okay, you need not be so to look into so many or to read so much. Just read carefully the output of your of the research, and you can see how they are corroborating or how they agree or how they disagree in terms of logic of the support and the arguments. And you can only do that as panel members if you have read and understood the paper that was given to you. So it is really quite interesting to become panel members because you learn so much, okay? If your aim really is increasing the knowledge and to contribute to the body of knowledge, start first by accepting being panel members, and next you become advisors, okay? So that is a very good training ground, no? For accounting teachers to embrace research. Okay, start by being a panel members, then next to become advisors. Okay, and then next you become you help in making the research output of your students into one that could be published. Okay, next. Okay, so a panel member can also disagree with the student's proposal on the basis of the arguments provided in the research paper in support. So the panel chair do not allow any single member panel to monopolize discussion and encourage a balance in the discussion so that at least one issue raised by each panel is addressed. very important as role of panel members is to be aware and conscious of time as well as your contribution. Okay, so you have to be listening to the other panel members' contribution so that you will not be asking the same question. Okay, so it is very obvious when panel members are not attentive during a defense because they will be asking same questions that have already been asked. Okay, so we have to really be very aware and conscious, and also time management is very important. Okay, next. Okay, so this is actually my second to the last slide, okay? And on time and encourage further informal discussion as time and circumstances allow. Many times a panel member can give, okay, interesting information, okay, or additional input, okay? And this could be rather after the defense itself, okay? You can really help improve the paper of the students. And at all times, okay, insist in collegiality and a tone of respect, okay? So anyway, we are all professionals in paneling. We also have to respect. We may not agree to other panel members' suggestion, but we can actually tell in a very collegial manner why we don't agree, as well as to the candidate's point of view. Okay, but we end our defense in a very collegial, and we always have to respect each other. Okay, let's have the last poll question. Okay, Sir Mark.
All right, so I think we have here the last poll question. So the question reads, the work that an author submits to a publisher or editor for publication is called letter A, proposal, letter B, journal, letter C, article, or letter D, manuscript. Okay. So as of this moment, we have received 55% votes already. So we are just waiting for it to reach about 70%. All right, so I think we have gathered enough responses. So we're closing the poll questions in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now, voting lines are now closed. So let's proceed to the results.
Yes.
Doc LV?
Yes, thank you, Sir Mark. Yes, most of our participants were able to get it correctly. 53% said it is a manuscript. Yan po ang tama sagot. Okay, and let's have the last slide. Okay, so thank you so much for your active participation, and because of the interest of time, we may have, if we had more time, we can have more discussion on this, but I know that even if we have, it's already lunchtime. So thank you so much, and God bless.
All right, thank you very much once again to Professor Christine and to Dr. LV Dacayo for that very inspiring and interesting discussion about practices in thesis paneling and advising. So perhaps we can now award our certificate of certificates to our presenters. So for our open forum, we'll be moving our open forum this afternoon. So right after the paper presentation, we'll have a similar to a roundtable discussion. So we already saved your questions, and we'll have it discussed later by our esteemed presenters. Okay, so let's now award or visually award our certificate of appreciation. So let's maybe call on a representative from PICPA. If we have, so we also have, we will also call on the chairman of the PICPA Foundation, Madam Evelyn Corpus, and the president of the NACPA, we have Dr. Florence Tugas, for the awarding of the certificate. And we also ask Doc Pe also to receive our certificate. So the certificate reads, Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, PICPA Foundation Incorporated, National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education, present this certificate of appreciation to P.R. Ochotorena, DBA, Far Eastern University, for her invaluable contribution as resource person during the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference on October 19 to 20, 2020, live via Zoom, given this 20th day of October 2020. Let's give Dr. a round of applause. Thank you, Doc Fe, and we hope to see you again later for our open forum this afternoon. Now, thank you po. And then we also would like to award our certificate to our two other resource speakers for this morning. We award the certificate, same certificate of appreciation to Miss Christine June D. Uy, University of San Jose, Recoletos. So let's give her a round of applause as well. Thank you, Miss Christine. And our last speaker for this morning, we call on our Dr. Elvira, LV Lacayo. So, as our resource speaker. So, certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Elvira or Miss Elvira D. Lacayo, PhD, St. Louis University, for her invaluable support or contribution as resource person for this morning. So, Dr. LV, thank you po. Round of applause po. Thank you very much, everyone. So, at this point, we are to end our session for this morning. So, before we end our session, let's have some few reminders. So again, we would like to inform everyone that the open forum will be transferred or will happen later this afternoon. So please be back for our open forum if you have additional questions. May we also ask you to fill out the evaluation form. Again, the evaluation form is a requirement for you also to have your certificate of attendance. So the link can be found in the chat box right now. Alternatively, upon clicking the Leave Webinar, you will be directed to the evaluation link. Once again, thank you very much for your active participation in this webinar, and we hope to see you again later this afternoon for the paper presentations and open forum.